Let's talk about the time a slave negotiated the freedom of her children with one of the most powerful men in the world. I'm Andre, and this is the story of Sally Hemings. Now, Sally's story is wild from the beginning. Pause and read this chart, but it's a lot. Sally was born to John Wales, a white slave owner. Now, her mother was Elizabeth Hemings, a black slave. As you can see, John was 20 years Elizabeth's senior, but they had about 5 kids together, including Sally. Martha Jefferson ended up being one of his children by another woman, Martha Epps. Follow along here. So that makes Sally and Martha Jefferson, who she became, half-sisters. By Virginia law, when John Wales died, Sally Hemings and her siblings became property of Thomas Jefferson and Martha Jefferson at Monticello, their Virginia estate. In the late 1700s, Thomas Jefferson became a European ambassador on behalf of the United States. In 1787, Sally would be one of the slaves that would accompany Jefferson to Paris. She would stay in his estate and act pretty much as a housemaid. Spent 2 years in Paris from 1787 to 1789 and returned to Monticello in December of 1789. She returned to Monticello pregnant at the age of 16. It is believed she became the concubine of Thomas Jefferson while in Paris. She served as his chamber servant, and it is believed that they had intimate relations. But I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it the R word. In 1789, it was time for Sally and the Jeffersons to return to Monticello, Virginia. But there were a couple issues. One, Sally wanted to stay because in Paris, she was free. Going back to Monticello ensured that she would be going back into slavery. But she knew that the French Revolution was pending and she didn't want to stay in Paris and have a baby to raise on her own. So she agreed to go back to Monticello with Thomas Jefferson on one condition: that at the age of 21, all of the children that she had and would have would be freed. And Jefferson agreed. And I'm not at all applauding Thomas Jefferson for agreeing to this, because at this time she was 16 and he was 46. Ugh. Sally Hemings would go on to be pregnant 7 times by Thomas Jefferson between the ages of 16 and 25. 4 of those children survived and lived until adulthood. Jefferson did keep his promise. 2 of the children were freed at the age of 21, and 2 of them were allowed to just leave Monticello, as was Sally. Technically, Sally Hemings was never freed, and she died in 1835 at the age of 62.